Hi there, and welcome to the Retail Drop podcast brought to you by Go Instore and Charge Retail. In each episode, we'll be talking to industry experts who share their insights on everything ranging customer experience, omnichannel retail, and digital trends in our ever-changing retail landscape. Hi, welcome to the Retail Drop. I'm Andre Hordegoda from Go Instore.
And I'm Ben Stevens from Charged Retail.
And today we have the honour of being able to share this podcast with you with Beth Horn, who's been at Facebook for almost 9 years.
Indeed.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Beth, tell us what you do.
So I am head of retail head of industry for retail in the UK, which means that I have the good fortune of working with some of the most iconic brands in the area on all of their major marketing initiatives and what they need for their business. I get to talk about shopping all day, which I think means I hit the jackpot job-wise.
Absolutely.
It's quite fun.
Well, I mean, most of the listeners, I'm guessing, will know Facebook, obviously, for the social media aspect of it. Mm-hmm. But can you tell us a bit more about what you actually do with some of the retailers that you're working with?
Absolutely. So what my team and I get to do is we partner with some of the best-known brands that you'll see walking up and down the high street, and really just get to work with them on what are their overall business objectives? What are they trying to accomplish? Is it a matter of telling a broader story about who they are and the value that they can play in people's lives? Mm-hmm. Is it about bringing more people into stores and helping them to experience the brand in person? Okay. Is it about more online sales and helping to grow that ever increasing portion of the pie for that business?
Sure.
Is it about loyalty, new innovation? What does the future of the store look like? How do we think about where the industry is going together? It's a really wide-ranging conversation,
sure,
which means that I'm never bored.
So I think most people, when they hear Facebook, probably wouldn't immediately think of retail. I wonder how long this kind of association and certainly your role has been going on.
So I've been at Facebook, it'll be 9 years this coming January, and I've worked with retail partners the entire time that I've been here. So it goes back quite a ways, and a ways before when I joined as well. So when I started, I was at our headquarters in Menlo Park in California and looking after various portions of the US retail business. I think one of my most interesting days, if I go back probably 6 or 7 years, I spent the morning on the phone for several hours with one of the most high-end luxury retailers on the planet, the fanciest of the fancy, and then the afternoon speaking to 300 people at a home improvement retailer headquarters. So that was a bit of context shifting between the day. So it's been that breadth the entire time that I've been here. How our business has evolved over the 9 years just about that I've been here has been really interesting to see. So I think we've moved from, if you think historically about Facebook as a social network and really looking at, if you're marketers, if you go back a ways, it's likes, comments, shares, what does engagement look like? We've really pivoted our business to think much more about business outcomes. And that's what we build for. So we have an engineering team at Rathbone Place here in London that's about 3/4 of a mile. I'm American, I can't get to kilometers, I'm sorry guys, but it's about 3/4 of a mile down the street.
How many stops
that
in the
way.
tube?
Well, you can walk it.
Okay.
It's quite quick.
That's good.
But it's just down the street, and we have an engineering team there that is actually building products for retail specifically, so that we can really look at how do we deliver more profitable incremental sales online, in store. How do we drive people to store and measure that through? Because ultimately this is an industry that loves a good metric and loves a KPI, as we should. So as our business has matured as Facebook, the platform, the products that we build to support our clients have matured as well. So I think it's, if you sort of reposition it a little bit and reframe it a little bit, it's thinking about where do people spend their time?
Absolutely.
Where do they discover new products? Where do they discover new brands? And since Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp and Messenger altogether, we're about 1 out of every 5 minutes on mobile.
Wow.
And so having retailers be present to help share what they're doing, share their products and get people excited about them, and ultimately drive purchase and loyalty and all of that good stuff that we care about as retailers, that's really where we play. That was a very long answer to your question.
No, it was perfect. So I mean, what you're saying, the conversations that you were having 8.5, almost 9 years ago, are very different to the ones you're having now, or is there some similarities across
it's deeper. It's deepened,
okay.
And I think that's a reflection of how the businesses and partnerships have matured, and I mean our business has matured over that time.
Yep.
We are 15 years old as a company.
That's quite young.
It's quite young, and I started my career at Macy's in New York, which is goodness, I'm going to get my years wrong, but 140 plus years old, I believe, at this point. And so when I think about how retail is evolving, digital is still quite new. Forget about whatever Facebook is doing this week, or Google, or Snap, or Pinterest, or Twitter, or any of the other major players in the space. So how can we best partner and really consult with these companies that are going through a huge amount of change?
Absolutely.
And what I think is really an evolutionary moment in the history of retail, which can be scary, it can be unsettling. I think every time I see the headlines, I actually get quite defensive about retail because I love it and I believe in it and people want to shop. But how that's going to happen, I think is going to continue to change. So the more that we can be empathetic stewards of the businesses that we partner with and really act as an extension of the work that they do, I think the better place that we're in. And it does lend itself, I think, quite nicely to a natural curiosity about it. And when you have a good in-store experience, you know it, right? And you tell your friends. There's a reason why we have these social experiences as people. That's not ever going to go away. But how it shows up and the ways in which brands take advantage of that, I think, is going to continue to shift. And that's a really exciting place to be.
Absolutely.
So perhaps not specifically at Macy's, but obviously, you said you're a lifelong retailer. What lessons did you learn before you came to Facebook that have kind of shaped your understanding of retail and helped you with your job here in terms of retail specifically?
That's a good question. So I think when I was, if I look back earlier in my career, I've had some jobs that were purely on the creative side and some that were purely on the performance side. And that real bifurcation of left brain, right brain, I actually found kind of limiting because you end up sort of sticking, at least for me, the way my brain is wired. I found that I was stuck in sort of one place, but I wanted to bring more of it in. So when I was in creative, I wanted to know how it performed. And when I was in performance, I wanted to see how it was making it sing. So I think what I've really enjoyed here and what that has all brought to life as part of this role has been that marriage. Because ultimately, if you think about brand versus performance, and a lot of marketing conversations we'll hear about, it's the funnel that we've all been seeing since time immemorial, and it's sort of accepted as true, and there's your brand performance over here, your brand activity here, and your performance that's on the other side. But the fact is that good brand work sells product, and good product builds brand. So if you look at Apple as an example, they have some of the most iconic brand work on the planet, and their product supports it. So it becomes a fulfilling cohabitation really between those two things. So I think one of the reasons why I was so excited to come here in 2011, and one of the reasons why I've stayed, I never thought I would be at a single place for as long as I've been at Facebook, and they will carry me out feet first. But I think what's been so exciting is bringing that together, that all of that can play together and have a bit more of a dialogue, because that's how people behave.
Absolutely.
That's how we all experience brands. So I think one of the other things as I work with partners now that's interesting to think about is I'm on a crusade to get rid of the notion of channels. I'm not going to win it anytime soon, but here's why. The only people who think about different channels are marketers.
That's an interesting comment. I was going to ask you, how do you define omnichannel, or
Sure.
is that a term you even use anymore?
Omnichannel, yes, because I believe omnichannel is just enabling shopping and transaction, which are two different things, enabling those wherever anyone wants to have them. So that may be on my phone, that may be on an iPad, it may be on my desktop, it may be in a store, it may be through an app, it may be through conversational commerce. It's enabling me to shop and transact wherever I want that to happen, and bringing it ideally into a holistic customer experience.
Okay.
I think what happens now, and there's good reasons for all of this. I think when we have partners and retailers that have been around for decades on decades on decades, or century plus, there are reasons why teams are set up in silos. And so getting them to talk to each other can be a challenge. I mean, I can count on two hands and at least one foot the number of times that I have been in a meeting with clients, and we've got the in-store team and the online team, and they are meeting for the first time.
Absolutely.
And it happens. There's very good reasons for this, but a shopper doesn't think that way.
Yes.
I am not an online shopper if I'm going to boots.com, just as I'm not an in-store shopper if I'm going to their shop across the street from my flat, which was actually part of how I decided where to live when I first moved to London. I was like, oh, there's a booth, so thank heavens. So thinking about what does the actual customer experience look like? She's just shopping.
Yeah.
So make that as easy as possible wherever she wants that to be. So that the whole notion of channel shift, and it lends optimization in silos as opposed to looking at the holistic total.
I absolutely agree with you, and we see it in our business all the time, and we believe in that. We should be able to deliver what the consumer wants, where they want it, and how they want it. So, without probing too much into the sort of philosophy of Facebook, or maybe if you're comfortable answering it, how much of that consumer experience do you see will be within something like Facebook in the future?
So I think if I zoom out a bit, so our overall mission is giving people the power to build community. And so I think that having that power in the hands of the users is a really important place to start. I think what you're referring to is more in-stream commerce.
I think so, yeah. And I'm thinking, if you look towards China and WeChat, and my understanding is that pretty much everyone lives their whole lives in there. That's the communication channel, not just to share thoughts and comments, but actually to order your food and, to go shopping and that. Do you see Facebook becoming more like that sort of environment where it's...
I wouldn't speculate in that direction, but I think what is interesting is what the consumer states are, because we build for consumers first.
Yeah.
First and foremost, if we don't do that, we don't have a business. That's the community that we serve. And then from there, how do we serve our businesses and our partners that work with us as well? So on Instagram, for example, we are trialing in the US with a very limited number of alpha partners what checkout looks like in stream. Because we know that one of the user behaviors that we have seen since Instagram started is people walking into shops, holding up their phone and saying, wait, do you have this dress?
Absolutely.
So how do we make that easier? How do we get some of the friction out of that process, right? So making it easier for people to transact right there. There's the dress that I like. I'm going to choose my size. I'm going to quickly add where it's going to be shipped to and to be able to transact in line. That's being trialed in the US right now. And I think, with that particular experience, it's thinking about what does the consumer experience look like? How is the flow? How does it work for the retail partner? There's a lot to figure out, so it's very early days. But I think because it comes from that core customer insight and customer behavior that we've seen for many, many years, I think that's the root of it. So how do we help enable consumers to do what they want to do?
Do you find, you said earlier that, was it 1 in 5 minutes online is spent on one of your platforms?
On mobile, yes.
Yeah. Do you find that kind of introducing retail online in through your platforms, do you find people are kind of open to that as they're browsing your things, or do you find it's slightly intrusive and maybe they're kind of pushing back?
No, well, first of all, if we had an experience that was intrusive or detrimental to the user, we just plainly wouldn't do it, because then that doesn't serve the community, it doesn't serve our mission, it doesn't serve where we are. What I have seen is that consistently for years and years and years is that when things are relevant to people, they want to see them. You think about the fabric of your life and how you go about choosing the clothes that you wear and the furniture in your home and the food that you eat and the meals that you cook for your family. Like, these are ways that we express who we are. And as a platform for discovery, Facebook and Instagram in particular have been really, really powerful for this. And there's a huge number of small and medium businesses that have been built on our back because of that. Companies that are able to find an audience, build it, grow their business, grow the number of people that they employ. And that's a really exciting place to play. So when I think about those points of inspiration, I think about on Instagram in particular, with being such a rich community around fashion and beauty in particular. Pick your subvertical, and that's going to be true, but those are some passionate folks. And how brands are built. You can look at companies like Glossier and the work that they do building a community. That is a born online business that is disrupting all of the major FMCG beauty brands. You can look like someone like Dollar Shave Club in the States in the same way, where it's changing how Gillette goes to market because it's having a different appeal. All of that's built off the back of those kind of feed-based environments like ours. So when it's relevant to us, it's incredibly helpful. And so that's why we have continued to see really great results from it.
So you feel that social media and retail are a kind of natural fit?
Absolutely. Well, think about it. when I find a really great pair of shoes, I tell my friends about it. I like shoes. They're great. They always fit. They're fun. But like that's something that I care about, and that communities are based around that. And I think one of my personal favorite Facebook groups is one that is focused on fashion. It's closed and it's secret, so I'm not going to name it. But it was started by a Facebook employee 9+ years ago now, and it's I think about 1,000 predominantly women, though not entirely, around the world who are 1 or 2 degrees of separation from each other, but asking each other for advice. So a friend of mine just came back to work after having her first child, and she wrote and said, "Hi, my denim doesn't fit me in the same way. I've got this challenge with it now. Who's got a good pair of jeans that's got the same problem?" And it's having conversations like that are about building community, having those conversations. That's always been a part of how we shop.
It's just been part of how we live.
It's
right?
part of exactly. It's just human nature. Yeah. So having a place for that also collapses miles. It was dead useful to me when I moved to London. It's like, I don't know half of the brands that I'm going to be shopping here, which is part of why I moved, was to have a really good opportunity to expand and to learn. But to have a community like that, and to be exposed to things that are new, that I didn't know were interesting, that are going to be fun and enjoyable and additive to my life, it's been a huge part of why we have continued to grow and have been, I believe, helpful to the community we serve.
I mean, retail's changing at its fastest rate ever.
Yes.
Yeah. How much of it is consumer behaviour change, and how much is being driven by the retailer, and how much is it being driven by technology, in your mind?
Yes.
All of it?
All of it.
At the same time?
It's all in the stew.
I read somewhere recently that the #1 job for teens is it's not doctors anymore, it's influencers. I mean, that's
boy.
A big social impact, right?
That's a sign of a really significant change in how we live and how people experience the world. I think the evolutionary moment we're in for retail is due to a confluence of some really significant circumstances. Each one in and of itself would have been big, but you put all of them together and it's why we are where we are. So I think it is a combination of the changing consumer and the need for things to be easier. So I'll come back to it in a minute. Yeah. Convenience is huge. I think there's changing realities of real estate portfolios and the pressures that's putting on the bottom line of a lot of the brands that we all shop from. And I think it's also technology and how that is feeding into a pace of change. So I think what's fascinating to me is this. We've done a lot of research around this with the cost of friction to businesses in general, but retail specifically. And there's this great notion of something called expectation transfer, meaning I experience something that is interesting, delightful, easier once, and then I expect it to be everywhere else. So my personal experience with this was, moving to London beginning of last summer, contactless payment everywhere here. Not as much in the States. This is a net new to my life. Basically, I didn't have, Apple Pay set up on my phone previously, but I get here, fantastic, this is dead useful. I go back to the States 3 months later on a business trip, and it wasn't available everywhere, and it actively made me angry, which is so stupid. This is not something that's actually a problem, but I had the expectation that it was going to be there. And I think that as that pace has picked up, that expectation transfer is hurting businesses that move slower.
Yeah.
And so I think that aspect of it is something to be absolutely obsessed with if you are a retailer, to just get obsessed with friction. How do you make it easier for someone to do what they want to do? I swear, if I could just get every mobile checkout to understand that when it's asking me for a credit card, it should switch from the alpha to the numeric keypad. Just that, right? If we could just fix that, so many other things would get a lot simpler. But it's little things like that. It's not necessarily the big, sexy, shiny object that's going to be the silver bullet for what we're trying to do. It's a lot of incremental things that are available to us now. It's just a matter of making the decision to go.
I'm glad you used the UK versus going back to the US as an example. I mean, I travel a lot around Europe, and you can't even use cards at all in many parts of Germany, and that is incredibly so. So we're quite far ahead then in the UK,
Absolutely.
Is that right?
And should be quite proud.
Yeah,
yes.
Great. So Beth, you just mentioned going back to the US and being frustrated with technology that hasn't been implemented, that has been implemented here. So thank you for saying that.
Absolutely.
Are we really that far ahead in the UK?
Yes, and there are absolutely things to be proud of there. I think there are fewer differences than I thought before I moved over, which is encouraging. I felt very at home very quick. But it's great to get those points of inspiration to take back, because I think it's hugely important to get obsessed about those moments of friction, as I was saying earlier.
Fair enough. So, conversely, I think in the UK, we've had a bit of a lot of change happening in retail, and if you read any of the headlines, you've heard about the death of the high street over the last 5 years. We've had major brands either close down or reduce their footfall, or reduce their store footprint, should I say. What do you think is the immediate future for retail in the UK and further afield?
Well, first and foremost, I think that there is a really incredible future ahead, especially for stores. They're going to change. And I think that's important. I also think that it should be, a moment of excitement and inspiration and possibility. Change is imperative, full stop. And because if we keep doing things the way we have always done them, we will get what we've always gotten, which is what got us to this point in time. So I think evaluating what role stores play is really important. So I think the death of the high street has been wildly oversold, but it's going to change. And I think that that's a good and a healthy thing. Whether it's coming up with more experiential retail and giving people a reason to go and to try things out, what different store layouts look like, just even small differences like less harsh lighting and different color paint on the walls. Or I've seen experiments with, rather than having from a fast fashion brand, instead of having 30 different size units for a single SKU on the floor, you're going to have one of each. You can get more in the back, but it means that the store doesn't feel as crowded and cluttered, and it sort of elevates the experience, so you're not feeling that you're just digging through things all of the time. So I think there's going to be some smaller tweaks that happen. I think having a more integrated approach between the online shopping experience and the in-store shopping experience is really where this is going to be the strongest, because again, no one thinks of themselves as two different shoppers in those cases. So how do you make it easier for me to click and collect? This is another place in the UK is wildly ahead of where we are in the US. Now, part of that is due to geography and miles between things. We've got a couple more of them back home than we do here.
Just a few.
Just one or two. But I think that having more ease of that and the speed of that is really exciting. The logistics possibilities here, I think, are best on the planet. And so the more we can be a lighthouse for that within the broader global retail industry, I think the stronger place will be. So how do we enable quick click and collect? How do you understand if I can communicate through to a brand that this is something I'm interested in? How do you have a store associate then pull other things? I mean, my perfect scenario, I want someone to build this, and I talk about it just about every time I give a speech because I just want someone to do it. The brands that I shop know a huge amount about me that I'm more than happy to share with them. They know my style, if it's a fashion brand. They know my style, they know my size, they know my purchase frequency. So you can probably predict, Gap can probably predict, if I have been buying the exact same pair of black trousers every autumn for the last 5 years, that I should probably be told when the next set come out. But I think what would be a really interesting and useful, because again, it has to come back to customer utility, a really good extension of that would be, okay, what's the conversational commerce way that can come to life? So
it's an interesting topic.
Right, so like if you know all of that about me, and I'm more than happy to share that, well, tell me when there's something that's new in that I'm going to be interested in. Can I then say, all right, I'm going to be by the store tomorrow, could you hold 2 of that pair of trousers in these sizes? And then a store associate could also decide, you know what, we know that I can either look at her profile and see what else she likes, or I know that we style these 3 items together, or if you like this one pair of trousers, let's try these other 2 that are new cuts. Bring all of that together. That's bringing together an online experience, a messaging experience, an in-store experience, but it's helping me. And it's making me feel identified and known.
Absolutely agree with you. And I think I read a recent report by, I think it was Forrester, but they were talking that 50% of CEOs or C-level people in retail are thinking about customer experience, automation of personalization, but mixing it somewhat with the human interaction. And how you've described it there, I'm thinking of, at some point, there's a store associate saying,
Absolutely.
hey, Beth, I know you. I think these would be great for you. Is that what you're expecting, or are you expecting it to be automated and pushed to you by a bot?
I think it's going to. this is the opinion of one. This is not Facebook Inc. This is Beth. I think that it's a combination of those things is going to be, I think, the best possible scenario. What Facebook at this point is, in many ways, a machine learning company. And we have the great fortune of hiring and working with some of the best artificial intelligence talent on the planet. It's a small pool, and we hire aggressively here, as do our competitors. And so when I think about the ways in which retailers can really harness what is our superpower and take advantage of that to fuel their business, that's the place to play. So how we use artificial intelligence and machine learning to do everything from understanding, hey, this is a piece of copyrighted song that shouldn't be uploaded, and you block it from being uploaded before it even hits our system. From that all the way through to, well, you really like the mustard colored jumper, and so maybe let's show you one in an orange as we're getting closer to Halloween, and what are the other items that are going to be most useful to you and most relevant to you. It's that kind of predictive technology that I think is really exciting, that more brands should take more advantage of, because it is our superpower and it can be enormously impactful for a business. Now, people still like to have a human connection. I don't think we're going to be in any kind of dystopia.
So.
We do. I mean,
hope so,
we're social beings. We like to go out. There's reasons why people go shopping as an activity with their friends. And so I think there's still always going to be a need for that human interaction and to feel known and recognized. So I think the brands that will do beautifully in this space are going to bring those two things together. It's the right brain and the left brain again, right? So it's how do you take all of the things that you know about your customer, all of the data that can be your superpower as a retailer if you let it, you're sitting on top of it, marrying that with all of the things that we know about consumer behavior and how people are discovering things and how and when they shop and on what different services, all of that together, and then create an experience that is also going to drive people to store where you can immerse them in the whole world of the brand. Stores do that better than anything else. And so I think the role of the store and the role of the high street is going to shift. So there may be more that is click and collect, but then there's the cross-sell and upsell opportunity the second that you walk through. And here's the thing that, I forgot socks, there we go. So like it's whatever those additional things that come onto it, I think are really interesting. I mean, Next has been in the press for this in the last couple of days. I mean, more than half of their sales, this is all public, more than half of their sales come from online, and half of those sales are picked up in store. It's a quarter of their business that is click and collect.
How much of that upsell opportunity is being captured by them, I wonder?
That's a good question. You'd have to ask them. But I think if you look at their new flagship on Oxford Street, it's gorgeous. And there's a cafe there, and there's more of the home collection is there, and they've got a kids assortment. It's a beautiful store because it can really fully immerse you in what they are trying to do and give you more of those options, including if you just need to have a sit and have a cup of coffee while you are going about your day.
Immerse yourself in their world.
Exactly. And that's what a store does really well.
So on that thread, I think most of the conversation in general about omnichannel retail kind of focuses on retailers with a big physical presence trying to improve their online presence. But recently we've been seeing it flipped. The Amazons are now opening physical shops. Misguided's done the same. How important do you think it is for online-only channels to introduce this physical side of retail? Do you think it's more important than the other way around?
I don't know that I would rank the importance, but I think it's a really good sign, and I think it's one of the clearest points of evidence that the store's not going to die, because when you look at those pure play companies, when they hit a certain maturation point, the next way to grow is through stores. So in the States, if you look at Warby Parker, started as a purely online glasses company. There was a social good element to it, so you buy one pair, they donate one to people in need. It's fantastic. I clearly wear glasses every day of my life. I love it. So they were purely online. More of their business is now in store, as they have opened those up all over the country. And technology is still very much at the core of what they do. But that shift of moving into physical retail, there's a reason why that's there. These are smart marketers. They see that quite rightly as a growth opportunity. But I think the secret unlock to that is using technology to remove friction. So the Amazon Go store is a really good example of this. I loathe, with dear respect to all of our fabulous grocery partners, it's my least favorite chore. It is my least favorite errand to run. And so any kind of online grocery shopping makes my world better because it just drives me crazy. But if you look at the Amazon Go store in Seattle, they took the worst part about going to the grocery store and just got rid of it, which is waiting in line. So understanding that's the technology behind a true customer need. Get me out of the store quicker. So I think that element for a pure play, for an e-commerce partner, if there's technology that can fuel that can fuel what that customer interaction is, that gives a really clear reason to have a brick and mortar presence.
Do you find, because of the kind of nature of online-only companies as being innovative and often startups, do you find from your experience that they have an easier time transferring to physical than perhaps, very traditional, long-standing physical retailers do?
It's a good question. I think I've spent the majority of my time working with the established enterprise brick and mortar retailers, so I can't go super deep on the other side of it. That said, I think there's inherent challenges in both. I think it's a matter of scale, because typically if you have an established enterprise retailer, they've got, in many cases, hundreds of stores, sometimes thousands of stores. And the online portion of the business can be anywhere from single-digit percentage point to 30, 40, 50% of the business. If you are an online-only company that's looking to open physical retail, I don't know anyone who started with hundreds of stores out of the gate.
Sure.
Right? So the learning curve can be different. You can experiment in different ways. The scale is just different. And so how you hire for that, how you figure out what are the people that are going to deploy against those two different challenges, it's a difference of scale and it's a difference of people and who you hire. But they're deeply complex problems and challenges to be solved on both sides. And there's incredibly bright people working on both sides of it. It's just how are the businesses set up and how do systems and silos talk to each other?
I think as the role of the store changed, so does the role of the store, expert, I think we call them now.
That's right.
And as a business, we're starting to move into the US, where I've always seen far greater levels of customer experience, I guess, or customer. You walk into any store in the US and they're very glad to see you.
Well,
we're learning
American.
that over the UK.
That's partly
is it an
just being
Americanism?
American.
Yeah.
Hi, everything's great. Yes, that's us.
So what do you think is the future of omnichannel retail? Where do you see it going?
I think it's going to be a really exciting time. I think there's going to be a huge amount of innovation. I think that there's going to be some pain, I think, which is part of what growing feels like. And I think that the brands that are going to not just get through this evolutionary moment, but thrive in it, are going to be the ones that ask big questions, that get comfortable with being uncomfortable and operating in a bit more gray, and trying things in a different way. It can be unsettling, and I have a huge amount of empathy for the level of responsibility that retailers have to all of their store associates, to everyone at store support center, to everyone at headquarters, to the industries, to the communities that they support. So I think if you keep that as sort of the center core of what you're doing, but really thinking to how to define the future and not be dragged to it, I think that will be a really fun place to watch what comes out of it. We have, in these moments of big change, if you look at them as moments of opportunity to try something new, to redefine, I have yet to meet a single retailer who wants to be middle of the pack. I have never met anyone in all of my years, whether it's at Facebook or in my life previously, where people come and say, I just want to I want to do well enough. People want to do career-defining work, and I think the circumstances are such that that's what we can do. We just have to be brave and step into something new. And I think that living inside the question of it is going to be more important than the answer. I'm much more interested in a point of view than in 2 + 2 = 4. I want to ask more questions. I want to try more things. And so I think as we look at how customer behavior is changing, where people are shopping is changing, the kind of engagements that people are looking to have. I mean, messaging we've only touched on a little bit, but as I push out 5 years, I think you're going to see messaging teams sitting cheek by jowl with search teams and display teams and email teams and social and all of that. I think that's a huge opportunity to have a one-to-one relationship with a customer in an evergreen way. So I think the brands that are going to really define what this future looks like are going to be creative. They're going to move quickly, or at least quicker. They're going to test, they're going to iterate, and be able to say, all right, well, this may not have worked in the perfect way that I wanted, but I learned this thing that worked really well and this thing that didn't, so let me take those and run. So, I mean, look, I think there's ultimately no better time to be a retailer than right now. I'd be bored to tears if all the questions were answered.
If you've got the budget, then innovate. I think that's
right.
it.
And even if you don't, you kind of have to. So you have to define what are the ways in which you are going to show up better for your customers. And the nice thing is that we all experience all of these brands, good, bad, all in the middle, every single day. So if you sort of take mental notes as you're going about your daily shop, or when you're going to get something for a special occasion, or if I just moved 2 months ago, I did a lot of shopping online for home stuff. So just you experience like what
Was
felt
that
good.
research or?
Oh, it's
You're
research and just basically
business and pleasure. Yeah.
Oh, it's just signing away my paycheck. It's great. But I think like that experience of thinking through what's worked well for me, what did I find interesting? Okay, well, how can that best come to life for my customers? Those are the really fertile places to play. So it's not boring, and I certainly wouldn't want it to be.
So your top piece of advice to any retailer listening at the moment would be?
Get obsessed with friction.
Okay.
Just get obsessed with it. It's pull out as many of the extra stops in between where your customer is and what she wants to do as humanly possible. We did a study in the US, and on average there are 22 clicks between getting to a site and finishing a transaction. 22. That's a lot. The more we can pull out of those, pull those steps out, the better. How can you anticipate what people are looking to do? How do you use artificial intelligence and machine learning to really superpower your understanding of the customer and bring that to life? So how we make that really flower in a way that's going to make it easier for people to do what they want. Because when you have a delightful experience, it feels great. And we all know what that feels like as consumers. So just get absolutely obsessed with it.
Well, people share it, don't they?
That's right.
That's it.
Word of mouth, it is a thing.
Beth, thank you so much for joining us
Thank you
today.
so much, guys. I've enjoyed it.
You know, it was a hard act to follow. But on that note, please do tune into the next one. I've been Andre.
I've been Ben.
Thank you.